So, last time on our big poster of what led to the Revolutionary War, we only had the French and Indian War, and we started talking about taxation without representation. So the British were, kind of overstepping their boundaries with the colonists, but they could deal with it. Look at all of these things that have happened since. So the British really went crazy, and the colonists were like, we are done. So, first of all, we had the Royal Proclamation of 1763. And what happened was Parliament was tired of paying British soldiers to go on the other side of the Appalachian Mountains and protect people from the Indians. They were like, we don't want to pay these soldiers, we're done. So they drew a line, they drew a proclamation line, and it fell right around the Appalachian Mountains. And they said nobody could go farther west. So nobody could go into Ohio, into Indiana, into parts of Kentucky. Nobody could go farther west. And you do have this map in your lesson to see. And the colonists were like, oh, we want to go farther. We've got more people. We're running out of room. We want to expand. And some of the colonists had already moved. They had already made it past the mountains. They were already past the new proclamation line. So they made them come back. So the colonists were pretty upset. They're like, listen, now you're telling us where we can and can't live. Like, we don't need your soldiers. We don't want them. But the British said, oh, you need them, so you need to listen to us. So that was a big issue. Then came the Sugar Act. And what the Sugar Act did was Great Britain taxed. They put a tax on foreign-made molasses. Molasses is like a really rich, thick, sugary substance. So the merchants got really mad because if I owned a store and I sold molasses and I could sell it for $2, well, now I had to pay a tax to the British. So let's say I had to pay the British 50 cents of that $2, and now I'm only making $1.50. So I'm not making as much money, so that makes me mad. So what the merchants started doing, so if I didn't want to pay this tax to the British, I just started smuggling in molasses. I started doing it illegally and smuggling it to avoid the tax. Then came the Quartering Act. So remember back in our Royal Proclamation, the colonists didn't even want the British soldiers there. They were like, we don't need you. We really don't want you, because the soldiers were, super loyal to the king, super loyal to Parliament. They wanted everything done. They were there to enforce the British law. And the colonists are like, listen, we broke free. We're kind of done with them. They're there. That's fine. But we're our own people. We don't really need you. We're fine. So there was already some tension and some animosity between the soldiers and the colonists, because the colonists didn't really want them there. So now this Quartering Act is passed, and it was passed in 1765, and it said that colonists had to provide British soldiers with a place to stay. They had to let them into their homes. They had to let them stay there. They had to take care of them. So if I'm a colonist who doesn't even want the soldiers here, now Parliament is telling me that if a soldier comes to my door, I have to feed them and give them a place in my house to stay? No, thank you. So, the proclamation wasn't bad enough. Then the Sugar Act came, and we're still getting there. Now I've got to let these soldiers in my house. But then comes the Stamp Act, again in 1765, the same year as the Quartering Act. And that's, up here we tax molasses. Now we're taxing paper products. So cards, like playing cards, newspapers, marriage licenses, any paper products could be taxed. So that led to riots. Colonists started rioting. Then they started boycotting British goods. They were like, fine, we just won't buy British paper products. You're going to tax it, so we're just not going to buy it. They boycotted it. Some extreme colonists, the stamp agents, the people that would come around and bring the paper products and collect the taxes, they would tar and feather them. So what that would mean is they would pour hot, sticky tar on them and then cover them in feathers. So when tar hardens, it's super sticky. You can't get it off easily, and the feathers were stuck to it. So then these stamp agents would go around town after they'd been tarred and feathered, and everybody would, look at them and laugh at them, and they would definitely know what their job was, and because people were upset with them, even though they were just doing their jobs. They did form 9 of the 13 colonies, sent representatives to the Stamp Act Congress. And so what that did was they thought, we'll try and do this the right way. We'll build a Congress. We'll come up with a real good reason to appeal this. So they tried to get the act repealed, to get it taken back. They had said, Parliament, you can regulate our trade. You can say what can come in. You can tell us what we're going to send to the colonies, but you can't tax us. Finally, the act was repealed. Parliament didn't go down without a fight, but they did finally repeal the act. But they're still not real happy about it because they had to go through all that. Then came the Declaratory Act of 1766. And that was Parliament's way. They were kind of acting like big babies. So, they're pretty mad down here, like, the colonists got their way. We had to repeal this act. So then they were like, well, we'll just show you we're still in charge. They passed this law, this act that said that they could make any law, any necessary law for the colony. So if they thought it was necessary, they could tell the colonists what they had to do. But the colonists just ignored the act because they were like, you're just doing this because you're mad at us because we got our way. Then come the Townshend Acts in 1767, and wouldn't you know, more taxes. This time we're taxing all kinds of imported goods like glass, paint, lead, paper, tea, things that people use every day. These are big common products in the colonies, so that's part of the reason it's impacting them so much, is because it's stuff they buy a lot of. So it's stuff they're being taxed on a lot. So what the colonists started doing is they started boycotting these. If it was British tea, we're just not going to drink it. They started boycotting it so that they didn't have to pay the tax, but then the British weren't making money off of it because they weren't selling their product because nobody was buying it. Parliament eventually did repeal that act in 1770. So 3 years after it passed, they did repeal it. So we've added several more things that have led up to why the colonies got so fed up with Parliament and with Great Britain that we led to the Revolutionary War.